that's one cool thing about writing stories is you learn if they're not facing a challenge, the story's over, right? And it gives you this view of, hey, when we face challenges, that's when you've got a story to tell.
That's
right. That's when you're growing. That's when it changes your view.
And it can help change somebody else's view just to hear your story, even if you're not going to write it in a children's book.
Hello and welcome back to A Literal Journey, a podcast all about fantastic authors of great stories. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Chad Morris and Shelly Brown. Now, interestingly enough, Chad Morris was actually one of my teachers, and so this could end up being a really interesting, revealing interview. But I'm very excited. Chad and Shelly are married, and they co-write books together. So I'm very thrilled, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for navigating all the different schedules we've had. It's an honor to have you guys here.
Thanks. We're excited to be here. And Seth was awesome in class. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not all the time, but again, we don't have to get into those details.
I wasn't awesome in class all the time either. Right?
I mean, you had more hair back then. That's all I'll say. I'll just remember that.
I did.
It was at the end of its run, right?
It was slowly creeping. Had the spot growing.
Tell us a bit of your background. What got you guys, the both of you, into writing, and you know, where have you started? What have you published? What have you been working on?
Right. Do you want to start? You want me to?
You start. You started the publishing stuff, so
okay.
You go.
Well, let's do what we write first, and then I'll say what we got into it. So I started off as like we write middle grade, so books for kids, right? This was my first series. It's called the Cragbridge Hall series. It's kind of crazy school in the future with crazy inventions.
My first book is called Ghost Sitter. It's about a girl who's being haunted by ghost toddlers. It's just funny and scary at the same time.
So all for kids, kind of 3rd to 6th grade, 7th grade. But then while we were on this journey, our daughter, we have 5 kids, and our only daughter got a brain tumor. And she's awesome and met it with like a lot of hope, a lot of humor, a lot of friends. And the publisher I'd been working with knew very well the story because I had to cancel some events and stuff while this was happening. And they eventually said, hey, would you write that story? So that kind of led, we waited till she was older and she was okay. We had to ask her if we could write that story. And in the end, we thought it was a good idea. So we wrote Mustaches for Maddie. And that kind of shifted us to now we write kind of more
contemporary
type stories.
Yeah.
Those ones did really well.
And the second one we wrote was Squint, about a guy who is losing his vision but is also a comic book artist, about a kid.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to go through all of them. I don't know.
We'll go
Girl,
fast.
best friend, goes through tough times. Best friend's a whale, talks to a whale. I'd love a whale for best friend.
Virtually Me, 3 kids go to a virtual reality school, which is cool. I'm waiting for the virtual reality schools to come on. I think that'd be neat.
And this one's one of our newest. It's The Wild Journey of Juniper Berry, about a girl who grows up off grid. She knows how to survive, like build rafts and avoid bears. But when her brother gets sick, she has to come into town for the first time and survive the scariest thing of all, middle school.
It really is.
And then our latest just came out a couple months ago.
That's The Playmakers, and it's about 2 kids who, one tried out for the basketball team, one tried out for the school play, and neither one made it. And they're trying to deal with, like, if I'm at school and I'm supposed to learn and I'm supposed to grow and I'm so passionate about it, how come I don't even get a shot at it? So what are they going to do? Something absolutely crazy, pretty insane, actually. What do you do when you get cut?
Yeah.
And not that you know, Seth, because
you've never been cut from anything, but we've been cut from
stuff. But we both got cut from the basketball.
I've never tried out for anything, so I can't get cut. What makes it impossible?
We put our pain in this book.
So what, I mean, I don't think I've heard of co-authors and stuff. There's what comes to mind is the Spiderwick Chronicles. Holly Black.
Tony D.
So right here.
Well, hey, wait a minute. Like, You mean right here?
Yes.
We read the
Yeah.
same stuff.
We do. I think we do. This is the genre that I really enjoy. This kind of age range of writing. But I've heard of co-authors, obviously, but I don't think I've. I mean, maybe I've never heard of a married author couple. It just feels like a breeding ground for a lot of
Fighting.
contention and fighting
Yeah.
and problems. maybe that's the topic for a different kind of podcast, But I mean, what is it like working together as a married couple on books?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Depends on what time
Where we are in the process. Today we're great. Today is a great day.
What do you want to say?
Because it's published. No, we both bring, like, I come from a theater background and it's very collaborative, right? Like you have to work with lots of people and lots of feelings and lots of good ideas and imagination, and you all have to work together and you have to create something. Film as well, like and so it seems easy, but it is really tricky. But I do believe in the power of collaboration, and I do believe Chad brings things to the stories that is some of my weaker spaces, and that I bring things to the stories that are some of Chad's weaker spaces. And we can write on our own. We were writing on our own before we started writing together, but when we write together, there is a strength to the writing that's worth the tears. They're not Chad's tears, I'll point out.
He cries in private.
I am the crier.
I cry on the inside.
Yeah, he cries on the inside.
No, the biggest thing we've got, and maybe if anybody's writers out there wants to collaborate, it is a little tricky. And it's good to set up rules. Like we always put one of us in charge of a book. They get to break the ties.
Always.
Yeah, we've
at
learned
the first few were really messy, and then I went, wait, I've done collaboration, lots of collaboration. Chad does too. He does for his work. He does a lot of collaboration for his work. And I was like, you know what we don't have going on here that we have in our other creative processes? A director.
Yeah.
We need a director.
So we do that. We put one in charge. But a lot of our contention comes because Shelly's a planner and I'm more fly by the seat of my pants a little bit.
The pantser.
Yeah. And so we'll have a plan, and then I'll come in and be like, Shelly, I've got a cool idea.
He rips my plan to shreds.
Oh.
And so it's like, but consider this cool plan. So that's where we get a lot of tension. So it can be really good. Again, I think that leads to a great end product. But if somebody out there wants to collaborate, sometimes it is useful if you have the same idea towards it. But if not, you have to kind of guard against that.
And just know that it will never be faster. It sounds faster. It'll never be faster. It'll be twice as long. So,
well, where do you feel like your personalities complement each other? Where do you feel like, and maybe you give an example of where you really felt like there was a good harmony when the synergy was there and it really helped with the book.
Which one do you want to do? So that we've gone different ways, right? In this, in general, Shelly's great at character and theme and getting into details, and my strengths are usually fast pace, keeping it fast paced, interesting, and funny. You're really funny too, but it's like
fine. You can take that.
No, I'm just saying we both have. And what's really funny is people who know us and like hang out with us, they'll say, "Oh, I can hear your voices when I read, and I know what Chad wrote, and I know what Shelly wrote." And then they tell us, and they're usually wrong.
Yeah.
So it's
not as clear as you might think.
Yeah, but like for example, so with the new one, we broke this one up by point of view, so it alternates. And so I wrote the basketball player, which makes a little sense. I have a little more background in that. And Shelly wrote the theater person, and he has a ton more background in that than I do. And we were able to help each other out with that. This one, The Wild Journey of Juniper Berry, was Shelly's idea. And she wrote probably the first, I don't remember, third of the book, and then was kind of running into a wall and said, "Hey, Chad, can you help me out with this?" Right. And I took it from there and broke it up into scenes. So it depends on the book, like how we're helping each other. But
I'll write like a chapter, and it'll be a little flowery, okay? Because details are so interesting to me. And Chad will come in and he'll be like, chop half of that. It's gonna move. And I'll go into one of his chapters and I'll be like, okay, it moved real fast, but I didn't care because I don't know who these people are. And he's like, oh yeah, we do need to slow some of this down. So just
good.
simple things like that make a difference. And he's got this story that really has great pacing, and he knows how to like make things exciting. And I'm like, but we can't sacrifice the heart, so like I'm there for that denouement when we come out of that transition of the like exciting, so that we're like, oh, we grabbed you by the heart right there at the end. So I mean, both of us are capable of doing some of this other stuff, but it plays to our strengths.
No, I'm the same way when I write. It's like I'm really good at the dialogue because I can imagine what people are saying, but not like descriptions. I'm like, well, who cares what it looks like? You can imagine what it looks like. You need to know what they're talking about. Like, that's what's important. I can give you that. And Kim's like, well, what do they look like? I'm like, whatever you want to look. Just what your mind tells you that they look like. It doesn't care.
Pick it up. I don't care.
You sound like me. Fill it in. I don't care what they look like.
But not that much. He starts cutting it.
Well, what's something that the two of you have learned about yourselves through writing, either individually or as a partnership?
Well, writing is sorry, did you want to go first?
No, I was just thinking.
One of my favorite things about writing is that it's this exercise in empathy, or this exercise in, I wouldn't say it's always empathy, exercise in imagining what it would be like to be somebody else, or lots of somebody else's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what it would be like to be. A lot of times you write characters like you, where, for example, in this one, we've got a character that's like super shy, and I was really shy growing up. But then we also have a character that's incredibly confident, right? And then so you got to be thinking, okay, what would make this person incredibly confident, right? Like, what experiences, or are they faking it sometimes, right? And it just helps in life. And then you meet someone in real life, and they might even bother you at first, and then you start to think, what could have led them to be like this? And you're like, oh yeah, that could. Sometimes you get to know them and you find out, and that's really cool. But that's one thing I love about writing, is it helps you be able to get to know with and empathize with people, which I think is awesome.
And I think coming from a theater film background, like the acting background, like I've been working in that for a long time, that empathy in other people's shoes, and what, like, why would different people make the decisions that they make? But when I started writing, it was very humbling, because it was not a natural thing for me to tell the whole story. Like, I could really get into a single character, but like understanding the whole picture of like the picture from like beginning to end, where do we start, where do we end, kind of thing of a story, was a very difficult concept for me, which is why I'm the plotter. But in understanding that plotting, I have used a lot of the storytelling skills in working with children, in just like talking to other people,
lessons, right?
Giving talks, or we do school visits and things like that, where I start to understand like what that shape looks like that we resonate with as people, so that I'm not like going off into like tangents, squirrel kind of things, which I'm very capable of, and keeping it concise to what is the heart of what I'm trying to say, and then saying that.
Could you guys share an idea for a story that came together, and the production of it was something a bit beyond what you were anticipating it was going to be?
Sure.
Nothing is ever even remotely like what we were anticipating it's gonna be.
That's good. All right.
Like,
that's a poll quote. That is a poll quote if I ever heard one.
Well, and to tack on to your previous question, that's one cool thing about writing stories, is you learn if they're not facing a challenge, the story's over, right? And it gives you this view of, hey, when we face challenges, that's when you've got a story to tell.
That's
Sure.
right? That's when you're growing. That's when it changes your view.
And
of
it can help change somebody else's view just to hear your story, even if you're not going to write it in a children's book,
So to answer your question, let's do Mustaches for Maddie. I talked about it a little bit, right? That this had happened. And for example, this book had just come out when we found out, well, it was about to come out when we found out our daughter had a brain tumor. And so I had to cancel like a lot of my initial tour and stuff like that. And the dad in the story has to do that too, right? But when my publisher came and said, hey, we think you ought to think about sharing that story, that's why we started collaborating.
Right.
One was because I was like, I've got one point of view on this story, right? We'll have our daughters, we'll consult with her, but it might be really nice to get Shelly in on this. Plus, Shelly read contemporary so much more than I did at the time. And so I remember it was really hard. I remember I came up with like the first, I don't remember, 8 chapters or something. And Shelly, help me out with this, right? Is this working? I never thought of writing a story like this. And she would give me feedback and to help me to write it in a good way. And then she would write some, and then it went back and forth. And that's the great thing, is like we remember different parts of the story, and we also had different points of view of the story that you could pull out a lot of the humor, right? Like our identical twins in this one calls the other one ugly face, right? Which still is hilarious to me. It's like, you've got the same face, you can't call each other that. And it's like, oh, I remember that, I want to put that in there, and then Shelly will remember a different part of it that she wants to put in, like the toothbrush.
Yeah. One time Maddie, this happened with Maddie, but we changed it in the book. But she jumped in my lap. She was like tiny, 2, 3. And she just like put her little fingers on my face and was like, Mom, I'm going to tell you a secret. I licked all the toothbrushes and yours tasted the best.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. Let me switch out toothbrushes, I guess.
And that's like the funny end of it, but also like it kind of drove me crazy in the moment. And I would like go into Maddie's room. It sounds slightly creepy, but like I would go into Maddie's room at night when she was just sleeping, and I would just be praying my heart out, right? That good things would happen, right? And I have this point of view, and I put it in the book, just trying. It's just a little bit in the book, just trying to get a glimpse of what it would be like, right, for the whole family. And Shelly was really good, if I remember correctly, at remembering how it's really interesting, but when one kid has like a brain tumor, they get a lot of attention, and other kids can get jealous of the attention, which is a really weird place to be in. That you've got this.
The amount of times I had to say, you don't want a brain tumor for like fidget spinners. I promise.
Yeah.
Like, I know she got extra chapstick, but like, you don't want a brain tumor for the extra chapstick.
Yeah, which just brought depth to the story, right? When you have other people feeling jealous of this thing when you're terrified in that thing.
And I felt pretty strongly too that we needed to put her back in school, because that's the truth. Like, sometimes we like take these stories and we're like, we're going to revolve the whole story around the like drama that is this. But how often, like, she still had to go to school the next day. She like got her diagnosis and then went to school and then dealt with, things at school, like either the rough tumble stuff of like academia, and all 3rd grade academia is pretty crazy, but and then the social aspects of school. She didn't get out of that just because she had a brain tumor. Life keeps going, and it's just, I think that's
part
true
of
for
that was
everybody.
Our decision. We wanted to keep life normal. She could have gotten out of it, but
nobody was gonna let her just be like,
it's important to keep moving forward, hoping for the best. So that's what.
And then she's doing great now. She had the one surgery, I believe, and then it was an incision through her nose, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, good memory, Seth.
She's doing great. She's now had She had 2 in elementary school, 2 brain surgeries, and then she just had another one
before she left on her mission at 19. So
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Wow. It's ongoing.
it's ongoing.
It is.
We hope we're through
Cells
it.
can do whatever cells want to do sometimes. You think you've got them, but there's no promises. So
Yeah. So now she's in college. She's doing great.
Yep.
And it's, you never know. She's had a brain tumor. So
then putting that book out was, in a way, it was cathartic. It was a summation of what your family had learned.
Plus,
in a way.
people were so freaking good to us. That was another
element of the
it's a great story of people. Maddie thought fake mustaches were hilarious. And when Maddie goes in for surgery, we got one person that had the idea to wear a funny make mustache from Maddie and send it to her. And then it kind of just exploded.
And they used this hashtag mustaches for Maddie and then encouraged other people to do the same. And we got pictures from all over the country and all over the world because she was really frustrated and stuck in the hospital. And these pictures kept coming to cheer her up, and it worked.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
People were so good to us. So that's another great part of the story.
And so then that book really brought you guys together as an author partnership. Going into your second book, you made a very conscious decision to, hey, let's create, ex nihilo, out of nothing. Let's make a book.
Yeah.
What was the spark for that second book?
So the second one was based, we had several ideas of what we could do, but it's based on, I had a friend where I knew him for like, I kind of met him in different situations. It's not like we were hanging out all day, but I'd known him for a couple of weeks. And then one day we were doing a project together on the computer, and he would like lean in real close and look down and then lean in real close. And I was like, "Are you okay, man?" And he told me he had a degenerative eye disease. And his was so bad, he was eventually going to go blind. And that idea, first of all, amazing guy. And I was like, what? How come you have to go through, and what would life be like, right, for that?
You were thinking about that.
So
yeah.
it's not based on his story, and it's not a true story, but there's the seed that started the story. What would it be like for a kid to have eye problems? And in the story, he loves to draw comics, right? So he's trying to draw a comic before his eyes get too bad. And so it is interesting to like just get to know people and see what they go through. And sometimes you're like, that is so interesting. That'd be hard to do. And people do it with such strength and
crazy challenges,
grace and cool stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes not, right? Everybody breaks down sometimes. And that's all part of the story.
Writing for kids, especially nowadays, it's a challenge because a lot of, like, I know my kids, if it's not bright and colorful on a screen, has explosions, superheroes, and girls aren't really part of the discussion, like my boys are not interested. If they're not engaged, they just want something that blows up. How are you able, because a lot of the books that the two of you have written, they're very engaging, they're deep, they're meaningful, they're about connection and resilience, contemporary. They have none of those like big flashy things, but they're still doing very well. How do you balance, putting meaningful things into your stories while at the same time putting, entertainment where it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's interesting? How are you able to maintain that balance?
Well, in Mustaches for Maddie, she has a crazy imagination, and there's explosions. And
so the answer is we do put explosions in here.
He goes through like, he's writing a comic book, explosions. Like,
there you go.
Actually, I don't think there's any explosions in Juniper Berry. I can't think of any.
No,
but
I really like that. I really like that title, by the way, because I know it's the juniper tree, the juniper berries.
Right.
Like I immediately thought that was a beautiful name to have. I think that's so. Then I already liked it. I thought it was creative. I thought it was
we won you over. Good.
You already got me just with the title.
And then in Willa and the Whale, she talks to a whale, like her best friend is a whale, basically. And that's super crazy and imaginative too. We were the kind of kids who didn't read the books with the stars on them, like the stickers, because the sticker books were like for adults mostly, even though they had kid characters. And
My daughter loves those kinds of books, though.
So
She
did
does.
ours.
She genuinely does. Genuinely, like.
But as
I
a
can't
kid,
get her to read Spiderwick Chronicles. She'd be like, no, I don't want to read that. That's gross. So
no, but like I think we weren't drawn necessarily to the like based on a true story always. We wanted explosions in our books too. So that's part of that pacing and imagination and stuff that we try to make sure is always there.
Yeah. Plus, everybody loves a good story.
Yeah.
You
So
you
once you
might
hook
not-
them with something,
you might not, you might naturally want a certain type of story, but if you can get somebody to give you a shot, it's kind of like you could be friends with almost anybody, right? Once you get to know them and realize why somebody is the way they are. Anyway, everybody loves a really compelling story if they'll give it a chance, and you've got to trust in that, and it's important. And kids are awesome, and not every book's for every kid.
no.
And all the kids don't have to read our books. If they just want to read big explosion books, honestly,
Go read big
I'm
explosion
thrilled.
Books. Yeah.
Right? Just keep
read.
reading and reading what sounds cool to you, and maybe occasionally read something that might be a little different to shake things up. But it's more important to be reading what you're excited about than not reading at all.
I saw a study recently that said they did 1,500 parents and then a bunch of K through 6 teachers, and they said, of your kids who are readers, like rate the level of reading that they do, and then they had a whole bunch of other questions that applied, and one of them was happiness, and the highest happiness sat with the biggest readers. Were the happiest kids.
wow.
And it's like, I just want you to be happy, kids. Pick a book, have fun, go read.
Yeah, it does a lot. It
Yeah.
does a lot for
your problem
for your
solving,
mind,
for your
yeah.
empathy, for your intelligence.
And to that point, there is something of a literacy crisis in America right now, because a lot of kids, if they're given the choice, they would rather just be on an iPad or on a screen and not
Even if
reading a book.
This is not about kids.
Well, it is about kids,
Yeah.
but also about the adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you address that? What do you think are some real practical tools? And like you said, you have a lot of boys in your family.
Right.
What are ways in which parents of boys, parents of kids, what are ways in which you guys have inspired or encouraged your kids to be active, to be reading books, to be engaged in literature?
Great question. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I would say some of the kind of more tips and tricks kind of things. One of them is they can go to bed early, or they can read in their bed for a half hour. That's it. It has to be a book. And there's a lot of kids out
You have
there.
to go in your room. That's one thing we did,
Yeah.
especially when our kids were little. You don't have to go to sleep.
Right.
You can read if you want to, or you can go to sleep.
Yeah, it's
Or
up to
you can lay there quietly.
You don't have
and
to read.
imagine
We're not
stuff.
going to force
right?
you to read, but also there's no electronics that are.
I love that.
Yeah.
Also, I knew there were things my kids will never pick up. No matter how many times I wanted them to read The Diary of Anne Frank, they were never going to get past the first 2 pages. They were like, "What is this?" So again, I'm totally taking advantage of the fact that they're stuck. And when they're in bed, we would do reading, and we would, we'd alternate between fun books and then just kind of just different
We would
genres.
read out loud too.
And we would read aloud to them from the hall so that they can hear in their individual rooms. Books that they wouldn't necessarily pick up themselves, but now they have good feelings about a book that's a nonfiction book about a girl, from a historical, all these things that they would probably try to avoid naturally. They're like, no, I like that book, so it's possible I might like this other one.
Yeah.
So just to give them good feelings about those kind of books.
Another big one is just access to books, right? If especially when our kids were younger, we would just go to the library once a week or once every 2 weeks.
and
And
they
they
could-
don't have to check out
They
any.
could pick out like 5 books, which is like way exciting, right? That's
Yeah.
a lot of books.
Or if we just had books and we set them out. If I tell my kid, hey, you should read this. This is awesome. Most of my kids aren't going to read it.
Just based on
They're like, Dad wants me to read it. It's out.
it's true. It's true, though. It's not just dad. It's me. It's a teacher.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But if I
no.
bring home books and just set them out, sometimes they'll pick them up and read them, or pick something else that they want to read. And another big one is just if we're reading, and if we talk about books and it seems like a normal part of life, then kids, I think they're just more likely. I mean, we've done straight up bribery too. I
Yeah.
mean, we've
Oh
done-
yeah, we've paid. Yeah, no problem.
we did book club, and I would just take everybody out to eat if you read a book.
If you read a book, you finished. At least it had to be like within.
Here I am looking for practical tips, and you're like, yeah, here, and this is very gentle. Like, we're gonna do this and this and this. Also, straight up bribery work. So
Straight up,
you're just
Yeah.
giving them money and everything to read.
No,
Yep.
but like
good.
going out to dinner is a big deal when you're a kid, you know? So it's like, well, I don't want to be the kid who gets stuck at home. So
Yeah.
they'll finish their
That is
book
good.
because it's almost the end of the month.
And
I'm to
another-
the point. I'm
Oh,
to
go
the
ahead.
point where if you tell them, hey, here's a book, but I'm not going to let you. You are forbidden to read this.
Yeah. No, there's
Reverse
something to the
psychology.
forbidden stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
they're
if
forbidden.
a movie's coming out or something
Yes.
that there is books and they're excited about it, that's another thing we would do. Well, you got to read the book first, and as soon as you read the book, we'll
We'll
take you out to the movie,
movie. but you have
or
to read
then
the
you can
book.
watch the movie on Netflix or whatever. One of my kids went through all the Last Kids on Earth because of that Netflix series.
Wow.
Or
Wow.
let them see the first movie of something and then encourage them to
Yeah.
read the next books.
So if you guys were going to give advice to, say, an author, or maybe a pair of authors, maybe a married pair of authors,
Very fair authors.
a
You know how
married pair of authors
Those-
who wanted to get started writing, what would be your wisdom? What would be your encouragement to them?
Run.
don't,
That's a word.
don't do it. Don't do it.
No.
Is that-
Competition.
No.
this is actually a hostage video right now. They haven't been able to leave. They're like, don't get started. You'll be stuck in this room with all these books.
Oh, my
No.
goodness.
What advice would you give to people
Honestly,
just starting?
the most important thing is if you want to write, you got to make sure that you actually write.
Yeah.
That's
It's great to have good ideas, but like you have to sit down in your chair and put your fingers on those keys and go.
Yeah, it separates most people who want to write from the people who actually get it done, and that doesn't mean it has to be good. Sometimes it's just a practice, but you got to write every day. And then if you really want to take it seriously, it is important to be thinking about like what would be a really cool story, and what separates it from other stories. Like how is this one unique? So you might not have your idea yet, and you just keep practicing writing with the ideas you have, but be thinking about, and even if it is similar, you'll notice some of our books, there are some stories out there that are similar, but what makes yours unique? Which way does yours dive deeper or is slightly different than something else? And then if you just sit and write and get it done, just great things happen. You start build momentum.
And
Build momentum.
I think no matter what level of a writer you are, what kind of a writer you are, I say finish stuff, man. I think that's one of the biggest things is people don't finish what they're writing. And when you don't finish what you're writing, you have nothing to fix and clean up and edit and send to anybody. Like it will never become anything if it never has the end on it. So get to the end and finish something. If that is a short story, because that's where you are and how long you can do it, or if that's what you're attracted to, make it a short story, but go all the way to the end on things and start practicing learning that like structure of story.
I have 2 questions left. It seems like there's been a lot of focus on the importance of story. I just want to zero in on that. You might be repeating some of the things that you said earlier, but that's okay. I really like the point you were making about the importance of a good story. Talk to me just a little bit more about that. Like, why do you feel like kids and people are just drawn to really good stories? What is it about stories that's just so important?
Stories are the way we change our minds to a
Yes.
great degree. Like even going throughout history, often there is a story behind, an Uncle Tom's Cabin.
I was gonna say the same thing. We were on the same
changing
page.
slavery. Facts are great, and we
Mhm.
need to know them and stuff like that. But a story is what helps us understand something new. And so both for persuasion, but also just in growth of us as people, right? Like when you're understanding something new, when you're learning something, it does something inside you. It like ignites something in your brain. You're happier, you're learning, you're growing, and you get all these benefits of learning, of reading, that your vocab increase, kids that read seem to get better grades, that they have higher empathy, right? There's even one that they spend more time outside, which I thought was interesting.
And more physically active, they get better sleep, all sorts of things that you just think, okay.
Which could be because you're learning and growing. In one aspect, you're learning something, a different point of view, or imagining how a kid would get out of, main character would get out of problem. And then that happens to bleed over into other parts of your life. Anyway, that's part of what makes story, I think, really, really important.
And I think just a small addition on that first part is that it changes the individual, which changes the community, right? So if we talk about Uncle Tom's Cabin and what it did for the slavery issue, way back in the day, and that's a book. I'm going to pull back out though my film background, and then we've got Roots, like brought a whole nother understanding to the community of what it was like to be a slave. It just changed the way people had been thinking about it or talking about it. Same thing with, there was a documentary called The Holocaust. People really hadn't been talking about it. They didn't really discuss what had happened there. That was something that was too difficult to really go into for those who went through it, and for the others, they just didn't really understand it. But that documentary, again, some right there in the 70s with Roots, just changed the way people talked about it. Will and Grace changed the way people saw people who were different than them. And I just think that stories in all sorts of formats have the chance to not just change individual hearts, which is really the core of things, but to change the way culturally we love and accept and view our past, and hopefully view our future as well.
Yeah, I worked at an addiction recovery program basically in Arizona, and a lot of the times it was the youth that were out there struggling with all these different things, that it almost always came back to the story that they believed about their lives.
Yeah.
Like whatever that story was, I mean, they could believe that they were a victim of something, and it could be true. Like they could legitimately be the victim of something, but it was how they interpreted that story and what they did with it that would affect their entire journey in life. Once they adopted a different belief, a different story about themselves, once they said, I don't have to live like this anymore.
Right.
This could actually be the springboard to something better. And I would just see them they would just take off. They would change completely. It was the same person, same experiences in their life, but because they believed something completely different, they went in an entirely different direction. And so to that end, I called this podcast a literal journey because I believe that we essentially become the stories that we believe about ourselves. And kids, especially now, they got access to so much content. They're just bombarded with narratives, with stories, with things and ideas to believe about themselves. And so I think it's important to just give them the best stories. So when people are reading good stories like the ones that you guys have written, when people are reading good stories, what is it that you hope when they read your books, they read your stories? what is it you guys hope that they come away with?
I would say every one of our stories comes from a place where we know kids who are struggling in these spaces. We both work in schools with kids. We have a bunch of kids, and we see those struggles that kids go through, and we just wish somebody could grab them by the shoulders and say, "You are good the way you are. You have value. Just those kind of things." But it's hard. It's just hard to believe when some adult says something to you like that. But when you go through like a whole journey with somebody, when you see them struggle with it just like you're struggling with it, and then what they learn as they go, I think that that's much more valuable. And I always very carefully guard our theme to make sure that we're saying what we want to be saying to the kids so that they come away feeling empowered just from their core, just because of who they are.
Yep. Challenges will come to everybody.
Yeah.
But there's
Doesn't
hope.
mean you're broken.
There's hope
It's
no matter
normal.
what, right? And sometimes, like I'll say often too, humor means hope. When you're laughing, it means you believe that you can somehow deal with this at least a little bit today. And that's just one of the things we want people to believe. There's always hope, no matter what's going on. There's always something good that can be coming around the corner if you're just trying for it. I love what you said.
Yeah, I do too.
It really is. And it kind of goes full circle, because when you would hope people would think of themselves as an author and think, I get to write my story, right? I don't get to write all the challenges I face, but I can write how I face them and what I do to try to overcome them. Because that is the heart of every story.
And I'm going to put out my humanity, and hopefully you can accept that into your humanity and see some of your story in my story.